Now, as promised, my exclusive interview with White House Chief of Staff General John Kelly. We began with the indictments announced in the special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe today. General Kelly, thanks for being with us. Let's start with the news today. These indictments were handed down. Paul Manafort, of course, his associate, Mr. Gates, and another minor aide to the Trump administration, George Papadopoulos. What's the administration's reaction? I saw a tweet early this morning, but what's the reaction?
Well, I would offer to you, first of all, Laura, my job is such that I am completely consumed between 600 in the morning and whenever I get home at night, which is usually pretty late. I'm not in a position to watch very much in the TV. I know that the gentlemen were indicted today. All of the activities, as I understand it, that they were indicted for was long before they ever met Donald Trump or had any association with the campaign. But I think the reaction of the administration is let the legal justice system work. Everyone's innocent till presumed innocent, and we'll see where it goes.
With being chief of staff as you are now 3 months in, is this a difficult moment for the staff, or is staff worried when indictments start being handed down that this is just the first, second, third shoe to drop, but there'll be many more to follow?
No, I think the staff is very comfortable with simply serving the nation. The vast majority of the staff would have nothing to do with any of this kind of thing. So there's no worry about it. Everyone is just doing the things that they were hired to do to serve the nation. I
think the president has made it clear what he thinks about the Uranium One story and the Fusion GPS story. But what do you think? Do you think there should be a special counsel appointed to investigate all of these narratives coming out with the DNC and the Clinton campaign actually funding research that was in part compiled by the Kremlin? Right. Kremlin associates.
Well, I'm one of those people that think the American people really do have a right to know what their government does, have a right to know what their government is doing on any given day, and by the same token, what private citizens are doing if they break the law. Again, everyone's presumed innocent, but I think with the focus of that's been on Mr. Trump and the focus that's been on this Russian collusion, which of course is not the case at all with Mr. Trump. We're very, very confident that these kind of accusations, unfortunately, the U.S. population outside of the echo chamber that is Washington essentially could care less about Washington, D.C. If you go out there into the hinterlands, people don't care. They're disgusted. If you look at the rates of acceptance among the U.S. population, the U.S. Congress, the media is all way down in the single digits or in the teens. Most people in America look at Washington with amusement, but not with an awful lot of respect or interest. So I think it's doubly important that when these kind of accusations are made, that they should be investigated.
Is there any sense that Bob Mueller, who was heading the FBI at a time when this was being approved, the Uranium One, and that he should recuse himself from any such investigation of this
I think
issue?
Mr. Mueller right now is pretty busy doing what he's doing. I think this whole...
So should there be another special
I guess so. I mean, again, not a lawyer. One of the strengths I have in looking at issues in my job, I think probably as a layman looking at this kind of thing, we need to find someone who's very, very objective, who can get to the bottom of these accusations. I think it's important. Again, the American people have an absolute right to know these things unless things are classified. This administration, certainly, you saw Mr. Trump do this the other day when he demanded that the JFK documents be released in their entirety with very, very, very few redactions, but nothing held back. I mean, that's where he is on this, and certainly that's where I am on this kind of thing.
You guys hope this wraps up soon with Mueller? Should it wrap up soon?
I mean, it should wrap up soon. I mean, it would seem that they're towards the end of the witness pile. And I don't know how much longer it could possibly go on, but we're in great hopes that it wraps up. It is very distracting to the president, as it would be to any citizen, to be investigated for something while at the same time trying to carry the weight of what being president of the United States means on his shoulder.
How much time does this take up for him?
Well, he and I have, as you might imagine, multiple conversations a day. Generally in the morning when we first talk, it'll be about these kind of things, just general conversation before we get down to business, but it is very distracting for him.
You have a big trip to Asia coming up this week.
Yeah,
we heard about the previous administration was supposed to pivot to Asia. We never really saw it. What's the administration's goal on this trip?
Well, just to, I mean, first of all, he has great relationships with the leadership in South Korea, Japan, and China. And then, of course, a commitment to that region of the world to be involved. So he's going to build on those relationships, and of course we'll do two conferences, one in Vietnam and one and we'll go to Hanoi to touch base with the national leadership there, and then go to the Philippines, where he'll meet for conferences, but where he'll meet the president of the Philippines. All of this is just to solidify relationships that are already pretty positive in my view.
Japan wants a nuclear language from the United States. If North Korea should launch an attack on Japan, they want to feel like there will be a strike by the United States. Are you guys going to give them that language that they want?
There's commitments in place for us to help.
Overwhelming force is not necessarily saying a nuclear response.
That's exactly right. But what we really hope, what I should say, what the president really hopes, and we all men and women of goodwill feel this way, is that the leadership, such as it is in North Korea, come to their senses, and with the help of countries like China, decide to denuclearize, give up their atomic weapons. There's no reason for them. They serve no purpose for that country. Just destabilizes a number of relationships, and obviously an ICBM program. There's absolutely no reason. But I don't think we can have a country like North Korea have a ICBM that can deliver a nuclear, now a thermonuclear device on the mainland of the United States. They already have the capability to at least reach with missiles to the great American citizens that live in Guam.
Congressman Trent Franks talked about the possibility of North Korea, with its hydrogen bomb capabilities, ultimately being able to explode an EMP over the middle of the country, electromagnetic pulse bomb.
Yeah.
And you play that out, that could ultimately lead to the death of like 90% of the country. Cars don't work, computers don't work, nothing works without the computer any longer. What about that? I mean, that's a scenario that's, like, Newt Gingrich wrote a novel about that, but that is the kind of thing that I think about keeping you up at night, because when I started reading about that, that really is terrifying.
And that's why he cannot have a ICBM that can deliver a survivable nuclear device to the homeland. But they're coming close, Laura, and I just don't think they
it kept you up at night. You said this was the issue that kept you up at night more than any other issue. Is it still?
It certainly still is, because it's such a destabilizing. But the great hope we all have, and they're already doing this, is that the Chinese exert their pressure. They're already observing the sanctions. We know that, to exert pressure on the leadership in North Korea. And we have great hopes for the Russians as well.
President Xi was just reelected. He's being compared now to Chairman Mao.
Right.
He's of that stature in China. The president tweeted out a comment basically congratulating President Xi on this historic victory. I'm paraphrasing. But Mao killed like 60 million people. Like, it's a communist country. Why are we just kind of celebrating Xi's presidency? It's because we need them. We need their help. Move in the North Korea problem. Again,
as Americans, we can't conceive of accepting a government like that, such as it is. But that is not us to pass judgment on. I think working with people, no matter who they are, is better than not talking to them. They have a system of government that is apparently works for the Chinese people, and
not all of them.
Not all of them.
There's a lot of Christians it doesn't work for.
But let's hope that this is a new kind of leader, and not look back so many decades.
What's our relationship with China? Are they friend, foe, trading partner? How would you describe?
Well, they've beat us pretty badly in terms of trade. That doesn't make them an enemy. They are, to say the least, a world power. That doesn't make them an enemy. They're probably, in many ways, have been smarter than we are in terms of business and trade. President Trump is committed to changing that relationship on a collegial basis. The disparity between what we buy and sell from them is very great. But by no means are they, I wouldn't even consider them competitors necessarily, just simply another world power.
They have a $360 billion trade deficit.
I think it's closer to 5. But that's, whose fault is that? I mean, that's our fault.
Yeah, well, they're doing what's good for them.
My hat's off to them for taking advantage of whatever they've been able to take advantage of to have that trade relationship. This president is committed to changing that relationship, but to do it in a collegial way.
We have an acting assistant secretary for Central and South Asian Affairs at State. We still do not have a permanent assistant secretary. In other words, it's a career diplomat,
right.
no
Yep.
offense to Alicia Wells,
Sure.
but it's not Trump's pick. Why is that? Why is a snail's pace of getting people nominated and approved?
The names have been put forward in most cases. I think and the president was making this case last week when he had lunch with the Republican caucus on the Senate side. We are, if you compare where this administration is relative to the Obama administration, we are way, way behind. Maybe half the number of those confirmed. And even under the last Bush administration, we're way behind. You know, the Senate Democratic leadership has been very, very effective in slowing things down to a snail's pace.
Has the Secretary of State slowed things down at State Department? The reports are that there's a bit of a divide there, that some of the names that the president wanted have been rejected, and that means then we don't have these key positions filled.
I mean, I would tell you that there's an awful lot of incredible vetting that goes on. So when before you're nominated to take a position, or even before the president considers you, and before the secretary considers you, there's a tremendous amount of vetting that goes on, and frankly, a lot of people have complicated finances and have complicated lives.
Those positions are going to be filled, though?
They will definitely be filled.
At one point, you were reported to say that on the refugee question, you'd like between 0 and 1 refugees coming into the country. Now, the president said 45,000 refugees. Yeah. Traditionally, it's been about 20,000 a year, overwhelmingly from the Middle East. They're Islamic, very few Christians still coming in. What's happening there, and why that number is so large, given what you advocated and what the President Trump campaigned on?
I don't ever remember. I read that. Actually, my wife told me.
Oh, your wife did? She's always right, by the way.
I don't ever remember saying between 0 and 1. My time at DHS was definitely, we should not take refugees into the country unless we know who they are, and consequently, we've improved the vetting process. The vetting process to date, although it's lengthy, 2 years, the vast majority of it is a 2-year wait to come to the country. The point is that we're down from 110, 45,000. One of the things that always does astound me about the refugee question is there's about 65 million people who are, I think by UN numbers, a large number anyways, that are technically refugees. And only a tiny fraction of that can be brought to the United States or to Western Europe or to Australia. It just seems to me, and most people I think that are, if they think about the refugee issue, it's theoretically a temporary problem. Best thing to do is to house them as close to their countries as possible, and to help solve the problems inside the country, like we have, say, in Syria.
So you're satisfied with 45,000?
Yeah, I think that's a good number.
And is extreme vetting?
But I don't know where this 0 to 1 ever came from.
Okay, and how are we extreme vetting? What is extreme vetting?
Extreme vetting is we simply interview people and have to satisfy ourselves that the person we're talking to is indeed the person who they claim.
Pretty tough to do in some cases. There are no records.
And frankly, impossible to do in some cases.
So they won't come in then. If you can't really verify that, they're not coming in.
If we can't verify, I don't think we should let them into the country.